Welcome back to the Forging Alpha podcast, and we have an exciting one today. We've got a guest, Jeff Wasserman from Supplement Superstores.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you.
Cool, man. Give us a background. Give us a background about you, S2, the business.
I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, born and raised. Went to school at Missouri State University down in Springfield. The original Supplement Superstore is down there. I walked in at 19 years old wanting to get an easy job that would give me a good deal on supplements, and fell in love with the model and how we did things, and really felt like it was going to make a difference, and kind of like planted my feet try to be on the ground floor of that. And my business partner then started working at the same store about a year later. And so him and I got a chance to work together and get our feet wet. And that's kind of, where things took off for us. Tried to build as much value in ourselves within the company. And then eventually the big carrot for us to chase was you get to open your own if you do a good enough job. And we called our owner's bluff on that around 2016. And he allowed us to go open up Kansas City. And so now we have 8 locations in Kansas City, and we just opened up Tulsa, Oklahoma last year, opened up a location down there and hoping to build out that and open up more of those this year. But yeah, man, very, very grateful, very fortunate.
Yeah. And your boss is who?
At the time, Andy Frisella.
Yeah.
Chris Klein as well. Shout out Chris Klein. He's the ghost of the company that no one knows.
Heck yeah.
But
so
yeah.
that college opportunity turned into just a little bit more than that.
Totally. Yeah. It was actually a tough time. And I worked at the Cardinals while I was also down in Springfield, the Springfield Cardinals, a AA affiliate, but they were at the time owned by the St. Louis Cardinals. And so there was direct ties there. And growing up in St. Louis, the Cardinals feels a lot like the Chiefs do in Kansas City, where it's just historic. Everybody grew up on them. Everybody loves them. The game day experience is truly special in St. Louis. If you go to a Busch Stadium Cardinal game, it really is a big difference from other baseball stadiums I've been to. And so to get a job with them, they actually offered me a full-time career type position when I graduated. And I had to choose between like this really cool thing that I told people about, and they all would be like, "Oh my gosh, you work for the Cardinals? Like that'd be so cool." And then saying Supplement Superstores and then having to describe what that is after for the next like 30 seconds. Because every time I told people I worked at Supplement Superstore, I'd be like, it's kind of like a GNC, it's like we try harder, we help people better, we actually are educated, we actually sell things at a low price, we're not trying to screw you, like, because it felt like I had to like explain myself on why would I choose that.
Like they're thinking, oh, this is what should be Jeff's dream opportunity.
Totally.
He's essentially thrown away to what they think is work at a supplement store.
Yeah, and I romanticized the idea of being on the ground floor of something that, Andy did a great job of painting a big picture for us to fit our dreams inside of. And I really took to that. And that belief, I feel like, really was helpful for other people to believe as well. And so a lot of us, came up together during that time of the company. So I chose the ground floor versus being just another number, if you will. Yeah.
So with S2, because I'm not from here, I moved here, Washington State, came here for school. When I came to Kansas City, that was the first thing I heard on the radio was ads for Supplement Superstores. I'm like, I've never heard of ads being ran on all these radio stations for a Supplement Superstore, and then seeing all over Kansas City apparel. I've never seen anything across the United States that compares in terms of a brand and a supplement store. There's a lot of supplement stores. Most of them end up fizzling out. They're mom and dad stores. What has been the driving force for your guys' success and mainstay?
Oh, man. I don't think it's one thing. I think it's a hard question to answer, but I would say that first and foremost, our focus on the customer experience, making the service be above all else the most important thing to us. And we definitely don't make it easy to be a customer for us. We don't sell online. We don't have like a ship to store option. We don't have a subscription option.
Yeah.
And so you have to physically come in the store, unlike really any other shopping experience now, because everybody else lets you get it online in some capacity. And so we've been so reliant on our number one product, which we always say is our staff. It's our team. And so creating relationships with people that come and shop with us that are authentic, There is no BS to them. We remember their names. We write them thank you cards. We truly try to provide a genuine service to the community.
Yeah.
And in return, they support us back, which is really cool.
Awesome stuff. From a leadership standpoint, because that's not easy, right? Having staff that buys into that and then keeping those people long term, which it seems like you've got unmatched culture in terms of that. What are some ways that you culture that, you nurture that?
How to build strong culture?
Leadership. Like, what are the mainstays for you in that aspect?
Well, I think first and foremost, externally, right? Externally, like how we deal with our customers in the community is try to meet them where they're at. And so not being above, any simple gym, or whether it be a big box gym or a small boutique or a class-based place. We'll go into anywhere where people are trying to make better changes and better habit changes for themselves and try to meet people where they're at. Yeah. Because I think that the traditional supplement store, like we all think of probably a 3-letter mall store in the top of your mind when you think of a supplement store. I think of GNC every time.
Yep.
And I grew up on GNC, and I think a lot of people do as well. And it's just an intimidating place for a lot of people. And so by going out in the community and meeting people where they're at and letting them know, hey, we're not just, these condescending, juice head guys that are, that they're fearing in their mind. You know what I mean? It's not fair that they feel that way, but that's just the reality of it. It's not who we are. It's not how most people that love fitness are. Mm-hmm. But that is, I feel like where we start with our culture is genuinely caring about you in your element where you like to be comfortable, and then try to invite them into our culture. And so internally, our culture is built on our core values, which are 10 values that we hold near and dear to how we operate as a company. Yeah. And we hire and we fire based on those values. We don't get it perfect by any means, but we certainly try. And when I hire somebody, it's because I think that they embody those culture, those values. And then if we fire somebody, we say like, hey man, like, as you know, in this company, this is how we do things. And this behavior that you've been doing on a consistent basis is not really reflective of that. And that also, I think, helps from a leadership standpoint, Caleb, because it removes it being personal. Yeah. It's not like, hey, I think you're this kind of a person. It's like, hey, when you do this act, say you're late 3 times for work, we accept responsibility in this company. And every time I bring up you're being late, you always have excuses for me. I'm sorry to hear that, you're having a hard time getting to work, but like, we really value that here. And so we're going to have to let you go.
One of the things that I've always been the most impressed with, every time I go into really any of your locations or I meet some of your employees online or in person, is how much buy-in it seems like they have, whether they're posting online about what they do or just the enthusiasm that they have when they talk about it. Mm-hmm. Is that partially because of the vision that you guys paint, you and Kyle? Because you mentioned that one of the reasons you stuck around S2 to begin with was that Andy kind of painted that vision of being able to open your own store.
Yeah, I think there's a handful of reasons there. I like to give some credit for sure to Andy, because he is a walking, talking example of why these values work well, because there's a huge headquarters in St. Louis that we can point at and say, Kyle and I, at the bare minimum, I think that our team has a better, Kyle and I think have an easier path than Andy did, because Andy had nothing to point at. When he was talking about, there was no painting to look at where it had already been painted where we could see what it would look like. He just told us about it. And like the headquarters that First Form is in right now, I remember the meeting that Andy brought it up in 2010, and he was standing at our Manchester location in St. Louis, and he was explaining exactly what the place was going to look like. And he was saying that like it's going to have these glass walled offices that overlook the gym, and his office has a glass wall that overlooks the gym right now. It's crazy. He's like, it'll have we'll be on this intersection of the highway. He was like a mile away from where they built it, legitimately. And it's just crazy. And so like visualization is a very real thing, and he practices it, and he is a great proprietor of what you can do if you do that. And so all that to be said, Kyle and I are the walking, talking examples of, if you buy in like we ask people to buy in, and you genuinely work on yourself, because we don't ask you to just try hard at S2. We simply ask you to make yourself into the best possible person you can possibly be. Truly value personal growth. We don't ask you to be perfect, but we ask you to show up, stay in the fight every day. It's difficult. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be uncomfortable, but we want you to genuinely feel your best working for us, and you're making a difference with the people that you're helping. And so by starting with them internally, they can then make the space I think people need to make mentally to be able to connect with others and create space to help others. But if you are so caught up in your own stuff, or you are, your girlfriend's texting you, or she's not texting you back, and it's bothering the hell out of you, you don't have any space mentally to connect with customers. And so we try to truly meet people where they're at as far as our staff goes, where they're at as a maturity standpoint, and try to help pour into them on a growth level to where they feel now empowered to help others as well. And so when I say we invest in our people, like that's the way I think of investing in them, is just where are their gaps and try to fill those in so that they can feel more confident, more secure, and have the mental space to be able to help others and create impact with people they meet.
So do you feel that mental space or lack thereof is kind of tied to the self-confidence portion, or what do you guys do to help them have that mental capacity to help others and meet them where they're at?
It's pretty case by case. I mean, our training process, for example, we have a 3 interview process just to get people started. So like that alone is like a really big weeding out, situation where you're trying to scare them off, essentially. Like, hey, this is going to suck. This is going to be difficult. You're going to feel overworked. You're going to feel underpaid. I don't think you really should want this. And you'll be surprised. There's a ton of people that are like, nope, psyched, and they still want to sign up for that. And then once we get them there, we start the training process, which is like 3 weeks long, and a bunch of videos that Kyle and I made a handful of years ago, and I look 30 pounds lighter, which is cool. And so they see they see those, and then they start helping customers in the store with the manager overseeing how they help those customers. And they really need live reps. It's really difficult to get good at our job without having a ton of conversations. Similar, Ricky, you were telling me how you used to sell cars. It's like you can love cars, but then when it comes to selling cars, it's just a different conversation. It's a different way of talking about them. You have to really understand truly the customer's needs versus why you love them, right? And so a lot of our staff come into fitness and supplements and love fitness, but they have a totally different reason why they love it and a totally different reason why they go. And so if they don't truly have the empathy, right, or the experience with talking to somebody who's just had a totally different background than them, it makes it very difficult for them to connect and relate to that customer. And so when you're talking to somebody about like why they should buy this or that, it has to come from a reason of what would help benefit them, not how it helped you.
Yeah.
And so they need to have a lot of reps with different folks to truly understand how these supplements benefit the customer. And so we have them typically deal with 100 people with help before we let them ever help anybody on their own.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
One thing we talk about quite a bit, especially for this year in the podcast, is that next level that we're trying to get to, whether that's financially, in business, and family. It's not just action steps to get there. It's honestly becoming a completely different person. Who did you have to become to get to the level you guys are at right now? What things did you have to pivot from, focus more on?
Man, that's a good question. I don't think that it's a who, personally, but I would say it's more of like what I had to shed to become a leader that I respect, which is a different, I think for some people they look at things differently, but in my personal journey, we say all the time in our company, what got us here isn't going to get us there. Yeah. And so that comes with leveling up as a person. Right. And I'd be remiss to say that like I've done everything right. I've made tons of mistakes in my leadership kind of career, if you will. And, as far as like what I aspire to become, Caleb, it would be like I aspire to be a more disciplined, level-headed, emotionally mature leader that people could seek wisdom from. And I've always been an emotional guy. I've always been a high energy guy, someone who can typically, speak to a room without having any issue with my confidence level there. But it was honestly one of the more difficult things for me in my early 30s was to just look in the mirror and respect that individual looking back at me. And that was a really difficult thing. And so I started investing less into the business because I was truly hiding behind that for so long, that I wasn't really giving myself the energy and effort that I needed to level up, if you will. And so I started being more honest with myself. I started working on self-awareness. I started reading books on instead of all about business, I was reading books on more intellectual type stories that would help me with my relationship with me.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of guys that hyper focus on the business side, and they can use that as a little bit of a scapegoat to hide behind the other sides of life.
I was that guy. Yeah, for sure. I thought that like all that mattered was success, getting to a certain level, and that value failed me. I got to an empty place. I didn't have a lot of values as a person. I think I led more selfishly for my early 20s, especially. It was just doing what was required versus what I believed in. And it feels good to be in a place where I truly believe in everything that I do and why I do it. And I like to champion for those things and try to build people up with those things and see things way beyond myself. But I think I had a really hard time, as most young guys do. But I just wasn't self-aware to it for a long time.
So that's just been an active progress or active journey in getting more self-aware, or what was kind of that turning point?
One of my favorite lines, man, Mike Tomlin says this, and that is, someone who has a hard time working within a team or organization lacks self-awareness. And so when I started looking at myself within our company and why I wasn't getting what I wanted, I had to kill my ego quite a bit, because I was getting told things that I needed to improve on, but I wanted to be like, but why aren't you giving me credit for all these things I have improved on? I was feeling like, why are you being critical of me here when I've been like pouring my heart out over here? And I just felt like I wasn't getting the recognition I felt like I deserved. And so because I didn't get that recognition, I felt like that was my excuse not to try hard in these other areas. Because what's the point in trying hard over here when you don't appreciate the shit I do over here? Which is a classic human nature thought. But I didn't know how to handle those thoughts. And so I had a bad attitude. You know what I mean? So it took, a lot of time for me to not get what I wanted, but never quitting, to grasp that I am the common denominator in my problems. And let's go talk to some people that are going to give me some honest answers. And luckily I have a great business partner in Kyle, who's a very different guy than me. And we have very different upbringings and very different, value systems that we grew up with, where he can tell me honestly how people are perceiving this or that about me, and where I was off, and where I thought that I was righteous, and where he would tell you, like, this is where you're not seeing things past yourself. And so you just have to have those people in your corner that you can ask those honest questions to, but also be prepared to receive honest answers, which is a process for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah. So personal responsibility is what I'm hearing is a big trend for both the company and then you personally in your value system.
Yeah. I mean, holding yourself accountable for sure. And also being selfless, recognizing that, like, if we want to go fast, you can go alone, but if you want to go far, go together.
Yeah.
And, I think that buy-in that you were talking about earlier, Ricky, can come from recognizing that if we're going to do something great, it's going to take a team effort. And I'm so grateful for the people that work for us that have that mindset, because not everybody does. And I think that mindset takes work. There's no one that we have working for us that's just blindly following.
Yeah.
We've had to work with them.
Did you notice a significant shift in the people working for you guys and under you when you essentially fix the inner shit, when you're able to shore those things up? Would it allow you to pour into other people more? Did they respect you more?
It's a good question, Caleb. I think I'm still in that process. I think that it's an evolving thing, and I'm never a finished project. And so that inner respect, I think, just changes the fuel in which keeps me going, if you will. I don't really pay attention now to if people are respecting me more or not, because I genuinely don't care.
Yeah.
I actually just care about if I respect myself.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I stopped looking around for that validation. But I think a previous me cared way more about that.
Yeah.
Which is just like the whole kind of the crux of it all, right? It's like you care about these things, but if you stopped caring about them and just focused on yourself, those things would take care of themselves. But you just don't know that when you're younger, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I would say like, it's not at all, you know, my doing. I think we have really great leaders in Kyle and Freddie, you know, our district manager that works for us, Freddie. They've championed that. You know, I think that like they filled in the gaps that I had in my leadership capital really well because I complimented them and other things that I was better at, and they killed it with I would say like earning the respect of our team for how they just live their lives.
Yeah.
They're just great men. Really, really like fortunate to have them on our team.
How has that, I guess, personal knowledge of things led into like delegation of knowing I'm going to let you handle this because this is your 1% edge.
Sure.
I'm going to handle these things. Like how has that process evolved for you guys? Was there any friction ever there?
Help me understand this question, please.
Are you talking within like their leadership
Within
team?
your guys' leadership team as owners of, and also delegation to your team, right? Of
And like identifying
responsibilities.
each other's strengths?
yes,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, strengths.
We're like fighting over, you know, who's in charge of what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, I think Kyle and I, we worked together for like 10 years before we became owners.
Yeah.
And so like we know what we're really good at and what we're not. So it's not really an argument.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, hey man, you like this. I like more front of house things. He likes more back of house things. And so I like the customer facing aspect of things. I like the experience in the store. I like how we, you know, market and brand. Those are the things that bring me passion.
Yeah.
And those are things that are annoying to him. They kind of like drain him, you know, and vice versa. If you started asking me about margin or, you know, how much we make on something or like, you know, how many units we're selling, I don't give a what. I genuinely don't know what we make on products. I don't.
Yeah.
To this day. I have no idea.
You're about experience first.
Well, I mean, all I would do is just cloud my judgment on what we would recommend. And if we just continue to recommend what we think is best for people based on what we believe to be the most efficient for people to get results, then we will always have, I think, a true North Star of getting people results and that being the focus of the brand.
Yeah. Was it Jim Rohn or Zig Ziglar that said, to get everything that you want, you just have to help other people get what they want?
I love that
Something
line.
along
I've not
those
heard
lines.
that. No, I've not heard that. I love that
I may
line.
have butchered
though.
it, but that's the thought. That's like, as long as you're helping people get results, then at the end of the day, they're going to recommend you to friends to help them. And the more people that you help, it's going to come down funnel and it's going to make the business go up with it. You don't have to
This is
be-
a Zig Ziglar quote too, but it's very similar to that I have lived by and tried to hammer into my staff over and over and over and over and over again. And that is, people don't care what you know until they know you care.
Absolutely.
So like if you want to get people what they want first, then you'll end up in the long run, right? Delayed gratification wise, you'll get what you want too, but it's about them first. And every person in every sales scenario, you're just waiting to see who's going to try to take the initiative on getting what they want first. And it's like, if you're the customer, you're just waiting for the sales guy to tip himself and, you know, show his true colors, if you will. And how much is it about you versus how much what they want you to buy. And the other way around, if you're the sales guy, you're like, I really want them to buy, but I don't want it to come across like a sales guy. And it's like, well, you're thinking about yourself when you're thinking like that. Just keep focusing on what they say they're needing. And that's all that matters. You know, always think long-term and you'll always do best long-term.
That makes perfect sense. It's the long game. It's not just about what's good today. It's what's good tomorrow and down the road.
And that just depends on like your mindset again of what you're getting into the job. So when we were talking about earlier with our buy-in from our staff, we had that 3 interview process to try to weed out the people that are like, I thought this would be a cool job while I'm in school, or I thought this would be a cool job because I love fitness. And like that leaves you to be thinking about what you would like and what's best for you. And so now you're having conversations with customers and you're not thinking long-term at all because you're just kind of like figuring life out while you have a job. And so when you're helping this person, you're not thinking, am I going to see them again? Am I going to be able to help them again? Am I investing in this relationship because I want them to come back and ask for me? Because if you're thinking about like, what am I doing in life? You're not wondering if that person's going to come back to you. You're not wondering if you're building a book of business with people that want to talk to you because you don't have long-term plans of where you're at. And so that kind of employee just doesn't do well with what we do. And so it's like kind of almost like a sad, self-fulfilling prophecy, right? You know, if you dip your toes in the water with a job and then start comparing yourself to the people that are all in, you're never going to think that you're going to go anywhere, because you're like, I could never be as good as Caleb or Ricky. Those guys are animals, man. They're just in it to win it every day. And, and so
So
they
then
start,
you're in it even less.
right. So why would I try?
Mhm.
Right.
Yep.
And so then you just say the grass is greener somewhere else, and you become that job hopper guy. And it's just like a unfortunate habit where it's like, no, everybody's afraid to be vulnerable. What if I work all those hours and I get screwed? Or what if I try so hard and I don't get what I want? It's like, well, here's one way to guarantee you won't.
Yep.
Now you're just got a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Mhm.
And it's more than that. When you focus on the negatives and what can go wrong, and you have that negative outlook, and that's what you're looking for, that's what you're going to find.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned the visualization.
That confirmation bias. Like, if I think it's going to go that way, that's what you're going to find.
Mhm.
Oh, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking
Thoughts
about
become things.
investing in relationships, how do you balance investing in your marriage, being a father, along with other responsibilities of business and growing that?
I'm learning that every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the scariest parts about me getting married is exactly that. A fear of not being capable of leading my family, leading a business, leading as a father, all at the same time. And I had a lot of fear around that.
Yeah.
So when I finally, nutted up, if you will, for the lack of a better phrase, and said, you know what, I am capable of this. I am worthy of this. I can do this. I took it really serious, like that responsibility. And, man, I don't think there's anything like more worth pursuing, than feeling strong in those areas of life. And so, I'm super stoked that I did, but I'm just still learning every day, man.
Yeah.
It's like, I told you, I got to go to the gym right after this. And it's like, if I don't, I'm not going to feel as good about me. I'm not going to feel as, I won't have as much space, like we were talking about with our staff. It's like, I won't have as much clarity because I'll be giving myself grief over not treating myself right, or
100%.
so forth. And so now if I'm down on myself, I don't have as much time to ask my wife about how her day was,
Mhm.
and having the space to listen to what her life has been like today. And, what can I do to help her, and listen and so forth, and take time to spend time playing with my daughter. If I don't do what I need to do to take care of myself, I can't take care of others. And so owning that was the most difficult portion of the growing up process for me.
Yeah.
Recognizing, dude, I built my entire life, guys, on like being able to do whatever I want, whenever I want. That's what I thought it was about. Like,
Yep.
my 20s was, I'm going to do whatever I want, whenever I want. And that was a total failure of thought.
Talk to us a little bit about that. Like, when you, I guess maybe you did, maybe you didn't, but kind of hit that threshold, was it a little bit of a letdown of like,
Totally.
I'm here,
Yeah.
but-
Like, oh, now what? Or
What's that?
was it like, oh, now what do I do? Or what
Yeah,
did
it was like I crested like the mountain that I thought that I needed to feel fulfilled, to feel happy, to feel worthy,
Yeah.
to feel enough, and it didn't work. There wasn't there wasn't an amount of success or money that would fill that void, because I wasn't right with myself.
Yeah.
I was letting previous relationships dictate the relationship with myself. Like, my worth to myself was dictated to me by previous relationships in my family with other people, that if I didn't get them to make me feel important or special, then I wasn't.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Without getting too, ridiculously personal, that's more or less the end of it. So I got to a point of success where I was just like, well, this isn't fulfilling. And so it was pretty obvious.
Yeah.
And so I thought, man, I'm doing something wrong here. And like I was saying earlier with the self-awareness, I've been a lot better about checking in with myself. So when I got to this point, I was like, I'm definitely, going at this the wrong way. And I'll say this without it being too preachy, but it's like, I had no relationship with God. I had zero relationship with God. I didn't grow up with that. I grew up Jewish until I was like 6 or 7. My dad was Jewish. My mom was Catholic. They chose to give us, in their words, something to reject. That was how my mom put it to me. We wanted to give you guys something, so you had something as a foundation or a basis. So when you're in school, you're not like, what is everybody talking about? You had to have something. And so I went to Sunday school till I was like 6 or 7. And then I was like, apparently not taking to it and not like believing it. And I think it's because my parents didn't really believe it and they weren't attending. And so when they were like, you want to keep doing this? I was like, I have a choice.
Yeah, like what's the other option?
I can spend the night at friends' houses again. Like, yeah, I'm in. I would rather not go to church
Let's
or
do that.
the synagogue, as we call it, or going to temple.
Yeah.
And so I quit doing that. And so like I didn't have a foundation. I didn't have like a relationship with God. I didn't consider God in my decisions, which means that now you're just considering yourself, which makes you an extremely selfish person by nature. And weird enough, when you think like that, you're not going to have a lot of relationships of depth. You're not going to have a life that you feel is feeling worth meaningful, right? And so yeah, man, that's, you know, the best thing that ever happened to me was meeting my wife, and my wife teaching me God's love.
So what did that look like? So somebody that before you kind of rejected it, right? And then Hannah comes in, and how did it just rubbed off, or what did
Totally,
that,
man.
what did that
Osmosis. Well, I mean, dude, my wife, you've met my wife, obviously, and fun shout out for everybody listening. Ricky and Lauren's wedding was actually our first real date.
You were there.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah?
we sat next to each other at the
We
table.
were all there. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, I had Hannah with me, and her and I had been talking for 2 weeks.
Really?
That's it. Yeah. We just got married last year. And so, Hannah is somebody who had grown up the exact opposite of me. And so she had a totally different foundation of values. And so she just loved so unconditionally. And this is the craziest part. So when I first met her, I still had a habit of meeting people and being more of like a pleaser type, where you are talking to somebody and you're hearing what they like. And I was like a master of none, but a jack of all trades. And so I knew a little bit about everything. And so
Does that come from the sales and talking to so many people through the door? You want to kind of like,
yeah,
what they
but
like?
also just trying to be as likable as possible at the time. You know, like it was more like just trying to be meeting people where they're at, no matter what it is that they like, have some kind of base knowledge of it. But over time, if you don't have any kind of value system, like we're saying, you disrespect yourself when you don't have any boundaries of any sort. So you're like, I'm a shapeshifter. I'm turning into something else based on this person's likes and dislikes.
Yeah, your identity's tied to that.
Correct. So you don't really know who you are in those moments. And so that was kind of like my 20s. I was just doing whatever I felt like I had to do to like get to the top, if you will, in my head, right? And so when I meet Hannah and I'm having this conversation with her, she's giving me nothing. Like we're on our first date, we're having dinner at Tribe in the River Market, and she's just like giving me nothing. And I'm just like trying to be this like clever, witty, funny guy that I typically try to be, and I couldn't because there was nothing. So I basically just didn't have a lot of substance to myself at the time, a lot of depth. I was a very shallow person, straight up. So she just met me where I was at. And then like, as I'm figuring out who I am and I'm going through this growth and I'm, you know, recognizing my voids where I need to fill in these gaps of, you know, things I've never truly dealt with. Right. She just loves me through it and doesn't care if I get better or I get worse. She's just like, oh, nothing was conditional.
Yeah.
And so like, that is the love that I can anticipate getting from God. And I didn't know what that love felt like because I didn't have that in the home as a kid.
Initially, was there a rejection from that of like kind of pushed you away, or was there a curiosity about that?
Great question. I was wildly uncomfortable, dude. I didn't like it at all. I was so uncomfortable. I'm like, you know, for the lack of a better phrase, like, I'm like, dude, this is too, you know, fluffy for me. Like, I don't like this. I like to live in the surface.
Yeah.
You know, on the surface of the world. And so I was not enjoying it one iota. I was kicking and screaming the whole time. But I will say, in our relationship, there was a time where, you know, we had to decide if we were going to keep doing it. And it was a really tough time for our relationship. And she asked me one of the hardest questions I've ever been asked, and I'll never forget it. She just said, "Are you sure you don't want something easier?" And I'm like, man, I am somebody that I know values personal growth, but I am kicking and screaming right now. Like, I don't like this. I feel like I'm being like, you know, dragged against my will. Right. And so she gave me a choice versus do this or I leave. And I was like, no, I want the hard. Give me the hard. I want to take that path.
Yep.
And haven't looked back since, and it's been hard ever since, for sure. It's still hard today, but I will say that it's been the easiest it's ever been, and it's a fun weight to carry every day, and every day it feels lighter.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
You referenced quite a bit about your upbringing. We didn't really touch on that in your intro, but
Sure.
talk to us a little bit about from baby Jeff up through college. Like, what was that upbringing like? What were the things that kind of shaped Who
Dude.
you are today.
Dude, my family's awesome. I have a brother, I have a sister. My older brother is 6.5 years older than me. He was just the best man in my wedding. My sister's a couple years older than me. My dad is like a big kid. He lost his father when he was 10. And so he got a stepfather, I think, when he was 14. But he just is like a big kid. He loves to buy fun, cool things, new gadgets, new toys. He's like the guy when you go over to his house, he wants to show you all of his stuff like a kid.
Yeah.
You know, like, look at this I got, you know, like that's the kind of guy he is. My mom is just like a sweet, super sweet woman that you would imagine, like the mom from like the movie Pleasantville. She's like that. She's just the sweetest person. But yeah, my upbringing was like, my dad was very much like the patriarch of our family. He led the family, but he wasn't the most emotionally mature guy. And so that really led into who I was a young person. You know, when I get frustrated, I'd be emotional. Everybody would know it. Everybody knows I'm upset when I'm upset, you know, and those are the things that, you know, pros and cons to everybody's upbringing. And I didn't have it hard by any means, in quotes, like 10 times harder for other people than I had it. But I just didn't have any kind of like emotional maturity to myself at all. I didn't have any value system like we talked about. It was just kind of like, you know, my dad liked to talk to me about him and what he had or how cool he was, or, you know, it was really just his insecurity coming through, and he needed to feel like special. And so he would just tell me about how awesome he was all the time. And so I thought he was. But one of those like things that I think that when I'm on my own personal growth journey that I like look for trying to be the kind of man that I'm be proud of, right, when it comes to my own kids. Ed Milet says this, and it's one of my favorite lines. And he's just like, man, someday your kid's going to figure you out, man. One day your kid's going to figure you out. What are they going to think about you?
Yeah.
And I was like, like, you know, like when you're a kid, it's just what's normal. But eventually when you start bringing, you know, your own values into the equation and start becoming who you are proud to be, you look around and you look back, and you have to learn how to then forgive your parents. You have to learn how to give them grace, love them for who they are, not what they weren't.
Yep.
You know, and that's been all the process that I feel really good about now. But at times it felt really heavy.
Yeah.
But that's kind of my upbringing, man. I played sports. I lived in a 2-story house with an in-ground pool. So I was rich by suburban standards. By kids in high school, it's always like, you have an in-ground pool?
Let's go to Jeff's house.
Dude, rolling in money. Gotta be. I mean, you got an in-ground pool and
it's
a
at your house.
If you have a trampoline too, like, you know. So, anyways, that was our upbringing. And I went to a public high school my whole life, or public school my whole life, and played sports. Like I said, played football in high school, loved it. Played rugby, loved it. And dude, like I said, my dad has always been like a savvy business guy, great sales guy. And so I always envisioned myself needing to be successful for me to like have worth.
Yeah.
Like, in order for me to like have a good relationship with me, I had to like get to be successful. And so like people would ask me like my biggest fear was like in high school, and I'd be like not being successful,
not making it. And at the time probably didn't have a good definition of what making it actually meant.
Totally had no idea, you know. And yeah, and like kind of like a made it moment once. I bought my dad. I told you, like, my dad has been like a guy who has like a lot of things, a lot of toys, a lot of gadgets. He's always just like bragging on something new and cool that he's got. And that's how he makes himself feel good. That's just his thing.
Yep.
Well, I'll never forget. I won like our biggest award after working for the company for like 6 years. I won our core values award at our awards banquet that we had. And Andy gave me a Rolex. It's actually this one I'm wearing. And I got a Rolex and like a week trip to Mexico that I never took, actually. Remember I told you I didn't travel at all in my 20s?
Yep.
I got a free
You didn't
trip.
even take the free trip.
Didn't take it. Still haven't taken it.
Not only did you not travel,
if
you
Andy or Chris
also,
sees this, you guys owe me a trip. Just saying, I never took it.
you didn't travel or vacation.
No.
Neither of them.
Never. Literally never.
Was that a personal thing, or you just didn't like it?
I had a pretty bad relationship with feeling like if I were to take any time off, that it would be like, I feared so much how like my company would view it, how like my staff would view it. And it really impacted like my level of comfort with traveling. And it's still, even whenever I finally like had way more freedom after we built our stores up to enough to a point where I could take some time away, I still had a hard time traveling, just because I would just be like, I just think about that one, I mean, dude, it's a loser mindset, but it's still, people have a natural tendency to think like that.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, look at the boss out there traveling while they're, all of his guys are working their asses off, getting paid nothing. Well, this guy's off, and I'll never forget, actually, there was a guy that used to shop with us that said something to one of our managers about me traveling when I went to South Africa. And it was a 10-day trip that we planned over a year in advance when I was in South Africa. And he was like, can't shop with you guys anymore, man. Sucks seeing your boss out there in South Africa just enjoying life. Which bullshit, like,
well, you guys are here.
Well, you guys are here getting paid pennies. And I was like, oh my gosh, dude, I got paid $650 to start. Like, what do you want from me?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it took me 15 years. How many years more do I need to go before I'm allowed to go on a trip and not have you bitch?
Was there a certain point that you got to that of like kind of taking the reins off? Was it a mental shift? Was it just like, I'm making this change?
Just like we were talking about, just getting right with yourself.
Yeah.
Just really letting go of what you can't control and, standing for what you actually stand for. And like, if people have an issue with that, well, that's genuinely their problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that says more about that person than it says about me.
Yep.
They don't have to like me. That's okay.
Yeah.
So Andy gave you a Rolex though, and the trip you didn't take.
That's right. And so my dad, I get home because I was in St. Louis. This is where I grew up. And I'll never forget, I came home with this Rolex and my dad was like, let me see that. Wait, they gave you what? And my dad, it was a Tag Heuer guy. Okay. To be fair,
justifiable watch.
Tag Heuer's pretty sweet watch.
Yeah.
Very sweet watch. 5 times cheaper than a Rolex.
Not a Rolex.
Certainly not a sport watch too. Like, not just any Rolex. This is a GMT Master 2. $10,000 watch at the time. And he's like, and he put it on. He took it off my damn wrist and he put it on and he was just like wearing it around the house. I'd never seen him do this. Every time you bring up anything, he's got one that's twice as cool, twice as expensive, and he's had it for longer. It's the first time in my life. And I didn't anticipate it. I just was like, yeah, I won this. And he was just like, let me see that.
He was like genuinely impressed by it.
Yeah, 100%. And it was like, he couldn't match me at this point in this moment. And I thought about, like, my dad really did sacrifice so much, I didn't pay for my own college. I didn't pay for my first car. They helped me so many ways. But that's what he thought being a good parent was being the provider. And that's what he thought mattered the most. And so I thought in my head, what'd be cool is to buy him a Rolex one day. And so I had a moment, like, I don't know, 5 years into business where I started my own stores with Kyle, where I was able to afford to buy him a Rolex, and not just any Rolex, excuse me, specifically a Yachtmaster 2. My dad likes to sail. He owned a sailboat. So I got him the sailing Rolex.
I saw the post that you had made about that, and I read your caption and everything, and it was so cool to see that, and that's kind of inspired me since you posted it. But I didn't know the whole backstory behind it before that, and I'm curious, when you thought about it like 5 years ago, and you had that thought to buy him a Rolex, you bought it 5 years ago, or you had the thought to buy it 5 years ago?
Oh, I had the thought the day after he was wearing mine.
How?
Just right there in that moment, because so much of me being someone who is trying to, at the time, like, ascend in my company or ascend in my life, being a pleaser of a person, I'm always looking for ways where we can add value to a relationship. And so it's just like, if somebody gets excited about something, you're like, oh, they clearly love that. How do I make that happen for them more often, or in a different, better way? And it all goes through the same lens of how you do that with customers and business. How do I reinvent this in a better way? And so I watched my dad have that experience, and I'm like, I'm going to get him a Rolex one day. It was like done, that was like finally something to get a guy that has everything. I can get him something that he doesn't have. And so we surprised him on his 70th birthday, drove down to Tennessee, whole family walks in at the same time, surprises him, and then gave him the watch.
That's awesome.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of a visualization guy myself. So you had mentioned that earlier, and I'm curious, when you thought about giving him the watch versus what it actually felt like, was it like a deja vu moment of, I've been here before, or what was that experience like? Did it drive you in business, having goals like that?
I wish I could say yes, but no. I hadn't dealt with the relationship that I had with my dad, which wasn't a good one at the time. It was just kind of an unspoken one. I was competing with my dad. And so that watch ended up turning into me more of like a fuck you.
Interesting.
Yeah. The watch ended up being more of like a story where I was like, see, motherfucker, am I good enough now? Am I like worth loving yet?
Yeah.
And it was not fun. And it was empty, you know, like I didn't see it like that at the time. I told myself the narrative that I wanted it to be, a special moment, giving my father something that I knew that he'd always wanted. And he was touched, you know, it was a very like, touching moment, but, you know, he wasn't hugging me or, you know, he didn't know how to take it. And then his brother walks in to surprise him, his older brother. And he's like, see what I got? First thing he did.
Yeah.
It was like, and so it's really hard to love my dad when he acts like that. You know, it's just the truth. And so when I still see him act like that at times, there's an infamous story that I'll share with you guys that is just like, and I hope this can help whoever's watching or listening. Like if you have an estranged relationship with a parent, like how to learn how to love them where they're at, because it's just who they are and it's just what they know. And it's like, you can't take it personal. I gave my wife a car for Christmas a couple years ago, and my wife had nothing nice, like nothing. She was making everything happen on her own, just her and her daughter. When I met her, she was going to school, working full time and mothering at the same time. And so I just watched this woman work her ass off every day. And I couldn't wait to like try to help her in some way where I'm not doing it for her, but making her life somewhat easier. And so she was driving a Hyundai Elantra at the time that was 10 years old and had already been like hit by another car, and they hit and ran her and so forth. It's just like couldn't catch a break. And so that car was not very safe. So I wanted to get her a safe car. So I got her a used Audi Q5. You know, it was like a $20,000 car, full disclosure. It wasn't a huge deal as far as like expensive cars go.
Yeah.
But it was a safe, nice looking vehicle. And we gifted it to her on Christmas morning. And it was my parents' time being there. And this one just like crushed me. Because I give my wife this car. My sister's videotaping it. I hand her like the car key. And she's like, it's just a keychain. She's like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, dude, go look outside, you know? My parents had gotten my wife, Hannah, a jacket, like a winter coat for Christmas. And she's putting on her winter coat to go outside to go look at her car that she's getting. And she's already starting to cry. And she starts to walk out. My dad is like helping with putting like breakfast together, but he doesn't even know this is happening. He's literally not even on the wavelength of like, someone's about to get the car and their life's about to change right in front of his eyes. And he's like thinking, oh, there's no baking soda for these French toast I'm trying to make. Like he's just pissed. So then he sees my wife put on the jacket that he bought her for Christmas. And he runs over as she's walking out. It's all in video. She's running out to go look at her car. My dad stops her and he's like, you like that coat, right? Didn't you like that? Huh? Like, did we pick the right color for you? Isn't that great? Isn't that warm? And it was like, dude, she's in the middle of walking out to go look at her car. She's holding the key.
Yeah.
And he stops her so he can like ask those questions. Like, hey, aren't I special? Hey, aren't I great? Wasn't I so great to do that for you? Because he could not see past himself.
Yeah.
And so it's just like watching that happen, like unfold in front of your eyes. It's just like, oh, you know, it was like, man, that's my whole childhood right in front of my face. You know what I mean? And so like, yeah, man, it's just a totally different experience whenever you start seeing things through a different lens. It's like once you take the red pill, right? Yeah. So I can't go back. And so that whole process of like forgiveness and then learning how to burn fuel, that's differently. So if there's anything that can bring value here, it's that like after something like that happens, get yourself, like figure that out, deal with that, assign it the proper meaning, give it the proper weight, which is very little, and recognize, how much you've gotten from that relationship in a positive, and then what you get to do with it moving forward because you dealt with that. Yeah. And so it's a beautiful thing. Yep. And it's something that like now I'm just so happy that I've gotten to go through, and now I get to, tell that story to other people and hopefully realize like, hey man, now you get to write your own story from here, and you don't have to like let that baggage, if you will, like dictate your pace moving forward. So best work I ever did, really.
Interesting conversation too. Do you think that those driving forces earlier on in your life, if those hadn't have been there, even though the connotation might be negative, right? Strong emotions like anger or
Oh yeah.
like, would you have achieved what you have achieved had you not
Fuck
had
no.
that?
Sorry for cursing, but
Yeah,
fuck
totally
no.
fine.
That's all right.
I love this conversation because I'm sure you guys are Alex Hormozy fans. And on his first podcast with Chris Williamson, I think they talk about like the fuel of him trying to like, you know, basically compete with his dad. And Chris Williamson's like, that fuel burns different, doesn't it? It burns hotter. And it's like, yeah, it absolutely does. I'll show you and fuck them is way cooler than like, let's do this together, guys.
Yeah.
It's just a different fuel. And so it's almost required if you know, the most, the three like most common traits found in ultra hyper successful people, an insufferable feeling, it was insufferable feeling of not being enough, a superiority complex, and impulse control. And I've been learning impulse control the last few years, but I've had the other two my whole life.
Yeah.
So you have to have a fuck you list eventually if you want to get past a certain level. And it's, I mean, like that sincerely. Now, a lot of people let go of all of that once they arrive and they realize that that's empty. But like it's almost required to have a fuck you list of people that you can't wait to say, I'll show you to. Mm-hmm. And it's like, there's nothing that burns hotter than that, in my opinion. That's just my opinion.
And why not have both, right? Like,
you can be... well, there's one's a lot more happy place to be, and one has a lot more contentment.
But if you got that fuck you list for the days that you need it, when you got to pull it out and need that extra motivation.
Oh, I still have a fuck you list for sure. Yeah. There's plenty of other people that have added me along the way. That's cool.
Yeah.
I like, everybody shout out to your haters, right? Everybody's got them.
So at this point in life for you, it's about directing that.
Yeah. I would say, keeping the main thing, which is honestly creating opportunity for the people that have believed in us to get to this point. Yeah. We have to build a life, for people that have dedicated themselves to what we're trying to build. And, our dream has to be big enough where their dreams can fit inside it.
What would be your advice to 20-year-old Jeff?
Go to church, love yourself, pretty much.
Yeah.
I think that that would just make me like me a lot more, a lot sooner.
Yeah. What do you think 20-year-old Jeff would say back to you when you told him that?
Oh, dude. This is what made me even like get to this level, guy, or like get to this point, guys, was like I became exactly who I thought I needed to be. Like I was the fucking coolest guy ever to like my young self. And I didn't I didn't feel it. I didn't know that. I still questioned all of that. It's like, dude, little boy Jeff you'd be a hero to that kid.
Yeah.
Like, look at you, man. You did it. Why don't I feel that way? Why don't I have that same feeling? I thought for sure that this would solve my problems. And none of it did. So that's really, I would say, like I said, if I talked to my younger self, I'd just be like, hey, man, become a more selfless, open-minded person and truly start investing into people that you have respect for and build a life of depth and meaning. And so like, that's what I think we're doing now as a company, and I'm super proud of it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What's the next step?
Next step is open more locations so we can, obviously we need to build a bigger infrastructure of more stores that we can acquire more capital, and that more capital can help us invest into the people that have really truly helped build this thing and multiply out our staff, like multiply out quality staff, putting them in a position where they can make the kind of money that they want to.
Create that opportunity for people.
Mm-hmm. Externally, basically franchise out from our own staff.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And just like you said earlier, painting that vision of the dream has to keep growing to include yours and everybody else.
Correct.
That's on the team. So when their vision grows.
And that's a beautiful thing about what we do, man. It's like, if you people always say like, people want to buy from their friends. You can lose a sale, but you're not going to lose a friend. And if we're truly playing the long game, like I think with the advent of AI and people doing everything more remote than ever, there will just be a stronger niche of people that truly enjoy human connection and in-person retail experience. And so we just want to like be the best at that. stay in that lane and truly deliver on, like, in a world where customer service feels like it's really dying, especially in an in-person customer service, to just be like a champion of that in a place where those old school service values are not lost, and you can go in a place and they're going to be proud of keeping it being a clean environment. There's going to be someone sweeping or mopping all the time. A place where people are going to be happy to be there and happy to help you when you walk in, and they're not on their phone and they're not headphones in and they're not, coming up from the back, tired, looking hungover, like people that are engaging, And so like, that's what we really, we really are proud of as a brand. And I think that there is going to be a space for that for the next 10, 20 years.
Yep. What's one thing you'd put on a billboard? One quote, one saying.
Well, we have one going up right in front of the Ferris wheel downtown, and it says, "You don't need to reinvent the wheel."
I love it.
Go to Supplement Superstore.
Love it.
Mm-hmm. That's what's coming. So that's what I put on the billboard.
Perfect.
What would you guys put on the billboard for this podcast?
Do the internal work. A lot of people try to, this might be too wordy for the billboard now, but a lot of people try to fix everything on the outside, and a lot of times, just like you were saying, you're the common denominator of your problems. When you start to focus on your attitude first and the perspective that you have, that you see the world through, that's going to change things the fastest.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Nobody's coming to save you.
That's one of my favorites. Yeah. No one's coming to save you. I had a buddy over at my house last night. We're sitting down on the couch, and he's just going through like some things that are tough for him. I said, "Well, man, what don't you like about yourself, and what are you doing to change that?"
Yeah.
And then, what excuses are you telling yourself in that equation? Because you're not being honest right there, like in that moment when you start to give yourself that out. Well, we've been trying to do this, but and it's
there it was.
Yeah. Oh, dude, you know what? Let me give you this. Let me close with this line, because it's my quote that I've been living by in 2025, and I love it. And it's, amateurs want to do what they love, and professionals learn to love what it takes. And so when it comes to like me showing up as a strong father, as a strong husband, as a strong leader within my company, this whole year is just about learning to love what it takes. And it's been cool.
Oh, yeah.
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Well, thanks for coming on the podcast, man.
Yeah, dude.
This was good.
Yeah. Love talking to you guys. Do it anytime. Appreciate chopping it up with you guys today.
Fantastic. Jeff, where can they follow you?
Jeff_Wasserman on Instagram. If you want to see me post some mirror selfies and of accountability at the gym and some random musings of my daughter and wife. But I'm kind of lost on the social media side. What do I do there? Right? Like, what do I even talk about anymore? But yeah, social media there, or Protein Bros podcast. If you guys want to follow our podcast, my business partner and I like to talk about interesting people. We talk to interesting people in the fitness community, as well as try a bunch of different protein bars and snacks and give them reviews. We've tried over like 1,000 protein bars in our lives. So
I mean, you are. If I had to trust somebody's opinion on a protein bar, I would assume that you're a pretty
bars
good
and
resource.
shakes. Oh my God, I've tried every protein shake on the planet, even when they were the worst things on earth. Now they all taste pretty damn good, to be honest. So
I don't want to kill the last quote that you had, but
please do.
give us your, if somebody's looking to start with a protein or start with a protein bar, where are they starting? What's your go-to recommendation for pointing somebody in the direction of a protein powder and protein bar?
Man, so we recommend protein based on need, on like if they're going to use it for the morning or at night or in between meals or post workout. But I would just say like a sustained shake. I mean, this carbon fire element protein that we have, it's peanut butter. I am a peanut butter fanatic, and so like I love that. So if you love peanut butter, you would love this too for sure. Yep. It is definitely like a sweet, salty dessert type texture, and so I really appreciate having that as a late night snack. And it does have a sustained assimilation, aka it absorbs over a longer period of time and kind of makes you feel full. It's satisfying, satiates like a whole food meal.
Yep.
That's what I would start with. And that's available at Supplement Superstores. Go check them out.
Cool. And then Supplement Superstores, just put it in maps, or what's the best place
That's
to
right.
find
Whatever the
your
one that's
Supplement
closest to you. We have
Superstore?
8 area locations in Kansas City. If you're outside of Kansas City, give any of our stores a call. It doesn't matter if it's a corporate store or one of me and Kyle's stores. It doesn't matter. They will ship you whatever you need, and they will be super friendly and very helpful, and will do what they say they're going to do. And if they don't, I need to know about it. So let me know.
Perfect.
Perfect. That's a wrap.
That's a wrap. Peace, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, guys.